The county jail is absolutely a horrendous place to be. Compared to prison, you want to go to prison every single time. The conditions are so much better once you get to DOC and start doing your real time. You have more freedom, you have more privileges, you have more commissary. You've just got, everything is just more available. It's more readily at your fingertips to get into like possible education programs. Like you can get your GED. Some places still offer college, which is pretty cool. I wish I could have gotten college in prison, but they stopped offering it because people didn't want to pay for it like that. And I get it. Citizens don't want to pay for a bunch of criminals to go out and get a degree for being locked up. I totally understand that, but also there is some very, very great benefits for people who get their degree in prison. But that's for another time. It's another discussion. When it comes to recidivism, that is something that reduces it greatly. A college education is proven to keep people out of prison. So it's kind of one of those things. It's an investment, social investment, but you got to get people on board to make that happen. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about that today. I wanted to talk about county jail and why that's so much more ridiculous than prison. The biggest part, I believe, is because most people that go through the county jail are not going to prison, and they're not worried about spending a whole lot of time behind the walls. Many people, it could be simple, stupid things. Driving on a suspended license, minor possession charges, things like that. It's just dumb stuff. You got people in the drunk tank that might be in there for a couple of days. It's a lot of people who are not going on to the big leagues of doing time. There comes an attitude with that. There's a mindset that I'm not going to be here. I don't have any skin in the game. I'm just going to act a certain kind of way, and nobody's going to tell me any different. And I get that. There's a lot of that attitude that comes in the door. The county jail is more prone to dumb, stupid incidents that will not happen once you get to prison. You might run your mouth in the county. You're not going to do it in the joint. Like, you get up there to where you're going, you run your mouth to the wrong guy, you're going to get airlifted out. You're going to get a free helicopter ride to shock trauma. You might just bleed out on the spot. Seen and heard some pretty bad things happen in prison. Serious acts of violence. Very, very, very dark, heavy stuff goes on. In a county jail, a lot of times you get jumped or whatever. And of course, there's exceptions to the rule. You go to particular county jails like LA County Jail. I mean, come on, man. That place is a war zone. I've never been, but I've heard enough stories. That's a bad spot. So there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. But for the most part, county jails, they just suck. They just suck. It's slow time. It's very slow time. And the reason I'm teeing up this conversation in this way is to kind of show you the mindset of the county jail versus, the big leagues. And for me, it was interesting because I had co-defendants. So there were 3 of us, okay? Something happened to one of the co-defendants where, what I found out later on, another co-defendant, one of the 3, tried to have the other one attacked. And I had no idea. I didn't know anything about it. They shipped us all out to different jails. So we all started in the same place. One of them stayed there. One went to another county, and I went to a separate county. Ended up being good for me because it was a better county jail to go to. The food was better. I was allowed to work, which was nice. At the one I was in initially, I couldn't work. It was, you have to have your sentence, or I think you had to have your sentence to be able to work in that one. And I didn't. So I was awaiting trial, etc. But the other jail, I was allowed to work. So I got a kitchen job, which was nice. Just able to stay a little bit more busy. With that being said, I did not have any issues when it came to fighting or physical violence in state prison. In the county jail, however, I did. It was wild. It was almost like I got my fights out of me and my dumb stuff while I'm still coming in. It was, how best way to say this? It's like I was getting my yah-yahs out in a weird way. So stuff that you could get away with in there, I was obviously testing the waters when I was first in. I was skinny. I was very skinny. I was young. I was skinny because I was strung out. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was doing a bunch of drugs, not being healthy at all, and my mindset was wrong. So with those two things, I felt like I needed to really step up situations when things weren't the end of the world and turn them into an altercation. So I got in one fight in the beginning, and it wasn't that big of a deal. Nothing crazy happened with that. The second fight, this one, I'm going to tell you something a lot of people won't say. Most people will not admit to you when they've been stomped in a fight. They try to act like, oh, no, I held my own, or I was tough. That's cool. For me, in this second fight, I got stomped. I mean, I got straight pummeled by this guy. He was a giant dude. He was like 6'4". He was about 275, 280. Big fella. I'm like 158, dripping wet at this point. Well, he says some stuff out of his mouth I didn't like. So in jail, the common lingo is when you want to fight somebody, say put your shoes on. So him running his mouth, just saying little dumb stuff, and I was feeling cocky that day. I said, man, put your shoes on. You know, this big giant. And he did. He sure enough put his shoes on. Old boy came over, and before I could get one of my shoes on, he just bum rushed me, which, you know, hey, is what it is. I ran my mouth. I should have been ready to go. I should have put my shoes on, then said something. Either way, it didn't matter. This guy was a beast. So he comes over, he runs over into my cell, bap, cracks me. I'm stunned at this point. I'm like, okay, this it's on. So we get to scrapping, and I'm trying to get a couple blows in on him, and he's just pummeling me. Big boy. He was just, you know, he was able to control which way I was moving. I didn't have a whole lot of options. So I'm fighting. I'm trying to hit him. I'm trying to put some work on this guy, but it's really not doing that much. He gets me to the point, this is what's messed up, because we were in like an open like tier, so people would like hang sheets up for dividers, this and that. It was probably about 10 seconds into it. Dude ripped the sheet off and threw it over me, so I couldn't see anything, and he's just bat. I'm trying to swing. I'm looking, you know, I'm just punching in the air pretty much at this point. I can't see. I'm getting rocked. He's beating me up pretty good. I don't have a shirt on. I just got like one shoe that was like halfway on, and he knocked me down pretty hard. And then when he was done, he started to walk out of the cell and walk up in front of the tier. I didn't take the hint to be done with it. I had to keep running my mouth because I was like, all right, I just got beat up. I got to get some hits on this guy. So I step out in the tier, and I got blood all over, just coming out of my nose. You know, you get popped in the nose, it's pretty easy to bleed. It's just running down my chest. I got red all over me. No shirt on. I'm just red blood all over my chest. And I'm kind of panting because I'm winded. And he turns around because he saw me come out of the cell, and he goes, "Stay down." And immediately, I didn't even think, I just said, "Your mom." So he came back, and we got to round 2. And I was like, oh, here we go. This is going to suck. And I knew it was going to suck because he hit pretty hard. And so he beat me up again, knocked me down. I got a couple hits on him. Nothing really to write home about. Nothing that really stopped him. I mean, this guy, he was just a big dude. And I was just outweighed. I was outclassed. I was outgunned. He beat me up. You know, I'm not going to sit here and lie about it. Beat me up pretty good. So at this point, I'm standing up still. And he started to walk away again, and I got back up, and I can't remember exactly what was said. I'm kind of shell shocked. He said something to me, and I muttered something, and everybody was like, yo, 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 stop, stop, stop. Like, even guys on tier were like, yo, it's done, it's over. So I just stood there. I got back up, but I wasn't doing anything. So he walked off. I felt really dumb at this point. I'm like, man, I just got beat up in front of everybody on the tier. I was like, this isn't good. So I go to the bathroom. I'm cleaning up. Guys give me a couple minutes, and a few of the older guys come in like, hey, what's up, young blood? You all right? I'm like, nah, man, I just got beat up. I got to go fight this guy again. They're like, whoa, 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 stop, stop. They're like, no, you don't. No, you don't. And I was like, man, I just got beat up. But this is the point where I learned a very valuable piece of advice in prison. Well, jail. It carries over to prison as well. They told me this, and it made sense. They said, hey, man, it's not about can you fight. It's will you fight. You showed him you'll fight. He ain't going to bother you no more. And honestly, nobody else is going to mess with you now either because they know that you will take it there. And it was like a light bulb went off. I was like, oh, but I got beat up. And they're like, don't matter. You stepped up. That's the whole point. I was like, oh, okay, all right. I felt a little bit better about it. Nobody feels good about getting beat up in front of people. That's a pride pill you got to swallow. You got to. You have to. You can't run around shooting your mouth off after that. And it was something I learned. And honestly, I think it protected me later on in my prison journey about knowing when to shut up and not always run your mouth about every little stupid thing. Now, you can't let people walk on you. You can't let them just, walk right across you. But you don't have to take it to that point. There's chirping, which, there's an acceptable level of it. But then there's that point of no return that you don't want to get to running your mouth. So I learned that through this beating, and it's something that's stuck with me ever since. You can learn from your mistakes, which is a good thing, but there's a saying. It's the smart man learns from his mistakes. The wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So at that point, I started to listen to people, to glean information, to go ahead and pick pieces of wisdom from their experiences. I would hang out with the older guys. I would listen to their experiences and stories, especially the guys who had been to state prison or federal prison or any other place besides the county jail, anyone who's done real time. And I would learn the things that they would tell me that they had problems with, and they wish they didn't, step into a particular situation in that manner. And it really was because of that beating that I took that I learned how to navigate things through my mind before running my mouth. And there's another great proverb that I've heard before. It says, how does it go? It's the mind of the fool is in their mouth, but the mouth of the wise is in their mind. And it makes perfect sense. So that's something to just think about. And if it means something to you, maybe consider how you can apply that to your day-to-day in a situation that could benefit you instead of harm you. Learn something before having to learn something the hard way. Learn it through theory instead of application. So, again, county jail. This time I got beat up pretty good, and it was kind of hard to conceal the fact about it. So I ended up. I don't even exactly know what happened. All I know was I got pulled out of the tier. They were like, all right, you got to come out. And they put me in lockup. So I'm in a county jail. Just got beat up. I'm eating my pride. And they sent me to lockup. So I ended up going to, it was a 23-1 lockdown. And it was, this is an older jail. So there was like bar cells. They were actually like the old bars. And the doors would slide open. And I spent 120 days in lockup in there. It was not fun, but it was something that really it kind of like developed calluses, if that makes sense. Like if you just pick up a guitar and start playing it, it's going to hurt your fingers for a while until you develop calluses, and once you develop those, it doesn't hurt as much. But you have to toughen your skin up. You have to develop that thick skin so it doesn't bother you anymore. And this experience for me was like mental callousing, I guess you could say. So I did the 120 days in lockup. It was my first calendar year in jail. So I ended up spending, I know I was there for Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. And at this point, I just decided to get on like my program. So it was rough in there. You couldn't get like commissary. There was not much to do. You get your shower. It's 23-1, so you get your shower every day. But you didn't have like any yard privileges, anything like that. So I just got to program at that point. I started reading a lot more. Ended up reading Lonesome Dove in there, which was a phenomenal book. I can't say enough about it. Larry McMurtry, the guy wrote it, and it was they even made it into like a mini series back in I think the 80s or 90s on television. Fantastic stuff. And it was like 960 pages or something. And still to this day, all the books that I read in prison, I've never read anything over 1,000 pages. I've had a few that were like 960, 970, 980, and but still to this day. So I started sharpening my mind by doing that. I was reading. And I started to sharpen my body as well. So lockup for me, it was almost like boot camp for prison in a way. So I had to develop pushing down the urges of things that I wanted because I didn't have many privileges. You're basically you're in a cell. You're in there. There ain't much to do. So I was reading, writing. I ended up making some dice out of soap. That's another story for another day. But I did a lot of working out. I tried to. That was one thing that would take a lot of stress off of you too. And I still exercise to this day because it's a stress reliever. It makes me feel better about my day to day. I'm not on any kind of like antidepressants or anything. I see so many people that are taking these things, and I'm like, have you tried working out first? Because I'm saying you might feel better, and you might get to the point you might not need that stuff. But like I said before in the previous video, prison was one of the best things that happened to me. It helped to develop good habits that made me stronger for life, things that I did not have. It gave me a level of, I'm not going to say discipline. I'm going to split hairs here and say self-discipline. There's a big difference. Discipline is when somebody's making you do something all the time. Self-discipline is when you do it of your own will, of your own accord, of your own volition. When you just decide, I'm going to do this tough thing, that is self-discipline. Anyone can be disciplined and smacked into shape, if somebody's yelling at you with a bullhorn chasing you around. So I developed self-discipline, and it was tough. It wasn't easy, but it gave me that mental strength to be able to handle other things that I've experienced so far in life, to be able to navigate disappointments, heartache, that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, this sucks, but you can get through it. There's a way. You can. So I learned a lot of that in there. And lockup in the county jail was pretty tough. It was hard. Like I said, I spent those holidays in there, which were not fun. It was my first holidays locked up, and I'm not even around my buddies or anything, so I'm kind of in that area. I decided to start working out more, and I got to the point where I would do like 750 push-ups every other day. So it was very tough at first, and I got to a place where it was like, all right, this is good. I feel better. Not just to burn the stress off, but also to put a little bit of size and muscle on me in case I had to throw hands again. And fortunately, that was the last time I had to put my dukes up and fight in prison. I didn't have in the county jail, I had no problems in prison physically. I ran my mouth a few times with some guys, and there's threats and this and that, and I'm gonna do this to you, I'm gonna do that, blah 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 blah. But you kind of have to stand up for yourself, no matter what. Doesn't mean you have to take it to level 12 every time and go get a joint and chop somebody up. It really just, it's all situational as well. So I'm working out, I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm trying to develop good habits at this point. so that when I do get to prison, I won't have as much of a time, like a hard time. And the movie 300 came out a couple years later, and we watched it when I was up the road. And there was a good quote from that kind of applies to it. And I'm probably going to get it a little bit wrong, but he said, the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed on the battlefield. And that makes a lot of sense. I was like, oh, I've been doing that for a couple of years, actually. I'm putting the work in behind the scenes so that if an incident ever comes up, it won't be as bad. It won't be potentially, as dangerous as it could be. So, the whole 5P thing, proper planning prevents poor performance. So it was a preparation time, mentally and physically. But still got to do that time. Now, it gets cold in those cells. You're in there cold at night. There's guys up all night screaming and banging, taking the shower shoe off and just beating on the metal sinks, just making as much noise as they can, getting nuts. There's a guy in the cell next to him. We called him Dookie Charlie because he'd crap in a cup and he would throw it. Now, luckily, like I said, there's bars, so they could reach in there. They're throwing it at the front door where the police come in and where they bring in the food and whatnot. I mean, this guy was wild. He was in there on some crazy stuff, talking about threatening to blow up a bus in Ocean City or something crazy. So, I mean, a lot of mental health issues in there. But Dookie Charlie was one of them, and there's some wild guys in there, some good guys. And we would talk, and try to pass the time like that. But it got rough. Like, you didn't get commissary. The food that you got wasn't that much. You didn't get much coffee. So you were always trying to get some extra food any way that you could, trying to make a connection or, utilize a connection with somebody that you knew. All that to say this, the guy that I got in a fight with, the one who stomped me pretty good, he went to work in the kitchen after that. And as I'm on lockup, he's bringing food around one day. I'm like, oh man, this is like adding insult to injury. So he comes in, I'm like, man, I'm thinking he's going to mess with my food. The complete opposite happened. He came up to the cell door, and he passed me my tray for breakfast one day, and he just did like one of them head nods, and I was like, what's up, And he goes, hey, man, we good? And immediately I was just like, yeah, we're good. He's like, all right. And I said, can I get some extra coffee? And he's like, got you. So at that point, he would give me like 2 cups of coffee every day, which that was a big deal for me, getting 2 cups of coffee. Or I'd be like, hey, man, you throw some extra bread on there? He'd be like, yeah, no problem. Because they bring like extra bread around in loaves and stuff like that. So little stuff, I mean, you got to take the good with the bad. I did some dumb stuff, but it all turned out to benefit my long journey that was coming up. So it was like you can pay for it in the front end or the back end sometimes. Well, no pun intended there, but it's you can pay for it up front or you can pay for it later. And I was investing knowledge, experience, things I didn't want to have to learn on the fly up the road. I was learning them then, kind of working the kinks out of everything. So dude would give me extra coffee, which was cool, and extra bread, and I would save the bread, and if we get like mustard packets, because you're getting sweaty meat a lot in there, it's just jail bologna. It's nothing fantastic, but a lot of times I would save the bread and the mustard because I'm starving. At nighttime, I'm just starving. I'm so hungry. I mean, I'm just hungry, and I'm trying to work out, so I'm definitely even more hungry at this point. You get bored, so you just drink a ton of water. Like, water is one of the things that you do. People they'll drink a cup of water for every 100 push-ups or something like that. It's just weird jail isms that people get into. And so my metabolism's up. I'm burning calories, and I'm hungry. At night, I'm real hungry. I'm fantasizing about just being able to get a ramen noodle when I get to prison. I'm like, oh man, I just can't wait to cook up a noodle and be able to eat that whenever I want to. That's going to be amazing because I know I'm doing time. I know I got to do some years. And it's just the preparation part. So I would take the bread and the mustard packs and I would make mustard sandwiches. And I'm telling you, when you're starving and you're hungry and you're hard up and you haven't eaten good food, that mustard sandwich hits so good. At nighttime, I'd eat that thing. Man, I felt like a king. I did. The smallest, stupidest things. Now, if I got a packet of mayonnaise, oh boy, that was big. That was real hard to come by. But you get one of those, make yourself a mustard and mayonnaise sandwich. You might as well think you're sleeping on a waterbed that night. It was so good. So there was the little things that you take for granted can be some of the the biggest things in the moment when you've got nothing. And that developed in me the mental perseverance, the mental toughness that I needed to go up into prison, having never been there before, into a jail that was a medium 2 when I walked in, but then they turned it into a maximum 1. So it was a maximum security prison. You know what I mean? And I was semi-prepared for it. I still had some issues. I had to figure out how to navigate certain landmines in prison, but for the most part, that was something that helped me in a big way. Was being able to go through the dumb stuff and work out the kinks, iron out the wrinkles before actually stepping foot into a prison yard, which is its own different set of rules and circumstances, totally different. But the county jail, it sucks. There's not much to do there. It's really slow time. It's really bad time. It's just tough. It's just tough for prison or for jail, being incarcerated. State prison, much better, obviously. And from what I hear, federal prison is actually pretty cool in a lot of ways. Obviously, depending where you go, this is always situational and dependent on a lot of factors. But federal prison, from everything I've heard, you're going to do most of your time there. You're not going to get as much of a possibility to do a reduced sentence, but the time is better. Everyone I did time with in the state that had done federal time, they're like, man, we had salad bars, we'd go to classes, we had yoga classes. I'm like, what? You did what? You had all of this? And they're like, oh yeah, all kinds of stuff. You want to go to college? You can go to college. And I'm sure things have changed. Maybe they haven't, but it's been 20 years since I got locked up. 21 to be exact. And county jail is absolutely the worst of them all. It just is. It sucks. There's people that are out of their minds. They're not going to be there for a while, so they do not care about repercussions. And then you got guys that are, you could tell the ones that were going to prison, they carried it differently. They were ready to, they were much more, how do you say, pliable when it comes to dealing with nonsense. Because they knew that they were going to be there for a long time. And it's like, okay, this is going to be my home for a set amount of time. And I can make that stay longer or I can make it shorter. And I can make it harder or I can make it easier. So there's a different mindset that comes with it than compared to, Johnny Q or whatever, who comes in and he's got 30 days for a suspended license. He's going to act like an idiot the whole time. So stay away from guys like that. They're going to get you wrapped up. So there's a lot to learn in county jail. Not fun lessons, but very valuable lessons. Things that can save your life when you get to prison. So 120 days in lockup. Got my kicks out fighting. It was dumb stuff. It was stupid. I ended up learning a couple good lessons about it. It's not can you fight, it's will you fight. And when people see that you will fight, usually they'll second guess stepping to you. Yeah, they might beat you up, but they're going to have to beat you up every time, and you're going to give them a problem. So it's one of those things that you just have to learn. You just have to learn to do it. And it helped me too. At first, I thought they were just saying to make me feel better. Like, oh man, young blood, it's not can you fight, it's will you fight. I'm like, man, they're just trying to make it sting a little bit less. So, but it was a good lesson. And then learning the self-discipline that I had to acquire in Lockup, and the doing hard things, like looking forward to a mustard sandwich, that kind of stuff. It sounds crazy, but it'll shift your perspective. Like, now on the streets, I'm not a guy who has to have the best of everything all the time. I can still eat a ramen noodle. You know what I mean? If I got to save some money for something, it's no problem. I can go back to doing that. I can eat cheaply. I can do this kind of stuff because it's delayed gratification for a larger end goal. It's it's a good skill to have in your quiver going into prison.